Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
Micah, you have escaped.
Seek me. I always do.
Phil's on his way. I can't get Charlie or Jaxon to pick up.
Phil, I need some backup, please.
I'm calling them, but they won't pick up.
Standing in front of Tyler's lockup down in the dungeons, row 1. Fully private, minimum of 3 statute waived by Prophet. Security cams blacked out. And I slammed his forehead into the glass 1 time. What's row 1, Tyler?
Don't talk about Charlie.
He married a woman with a 5-year-old little girl. He heard a rumor that his wife was sleeping around with her old husband, so he went ahead and shot the ex-husband. Then he strangled the wife for a bit while the little girl watched. Then he shot her too.
You think I should talk to Charlie?
You're selling me a pie. You wanna fuck with me over a single quid, lose your only customer? Probably should just bake better pies.
Sabrina, right. Rule 2, no talking about Sabrina.
These are the Beam Chronicles with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 2, Compromise, Chapter 11, Jaxon Teaque.
Missing Sydney's request for help because we were busy having sex was kind of bad when it happened once, but in time would be the sort of thing we laughed about. When it happened again, it got a lot less funny. And in our defense, we weren't just recklessly popping out our comms and doing it 24/7 to hell with Sydney or anyone else who might need us, especially since the last leper incident. We coordinated ourselves very carefully. Sydney wasn't supposed to be fighting anyone for another few hours. He didn't even make it to the location of his bust, and if it weren't for a nearly unprecedented breakout leading to a surprise attack, Charlie and I would have been at the ready. Hell, out of all the times in the past year that Charlie and I had been together, only twice did it interfere with business, which I think indicated we were pretty good at picking our spots, but maybe it was the kind of job where we should have been prepped for anything, always at the ready, especially when it was Sid's neck on the line. We felt plenty bad about it, enough to revisit our plans, agreeing to only remove our comms once Sydney was safe at home. But just in case we weren't going to change, one of Murphy's infamous tongue lashings ensured that we did. Charlie was way more concerned than I was about the fact that Murphy knew our secret, frantically wondering how many more did as well. It was honestly more troubling to me that she was so upset about it than it was that he knew. Who cared about just Murph? And did she really think nobody would ever find out? And worse yet, at this point, did it really matter if people knew about it? Because it didn't to me. I kind of like the idea of people knowing I was with Charlie. I had to remind myself it was one step closer to Howie or the press knowing, which was patently bad. But whatever, it was a wrinkle kind of in the back of my mind. The front of my mind was still Sydney, and even though we didn't explain everything, I vowed to him no matter what happened for the rest of our lives, I'd drop everything the second he called me. He seemed to laugh it off, undisturbed, forgiving, and frankly past it already, but I knew how deeply he tended to stuff things when he didn't understand them. Even for as flippantly as he threw the word around, Sid was my brother. I wanted to ensure we were good. He actually tested me on it a few times, giving me emergency drill pages now and then, and I responded promptly to all of them. Once in the middle of making out with Charlie, which pissed her off, but she got over it. Come to think of it, I'm not sure she ever formally apologized to Sydney the way I did, but I think he just kind of tacked hers onto mine, which was fine. Charlie wasn't the greatest apologizer. If Sydney was on the front of my mind, second in line was how Leper managed to bust out of the dungeons. The Dungeoneers on surveillance claimed a row 1 privacy blackout occurred, and when the cameras came back on, Leper was gone. But up to this point, the only time a privacy blackout ever happened was when I talked to Tyler. Those conversations were on Mondays, and Leper got out on a Wednesday, which basically exonerated me, if anyone suspected me in the first place. Furthermore, when I talked to Tyler, his cell was blacked out. Not the entire row. Something didn't add up. The Dungeoneering department kind of had a history of being bribed into stupid things, and Dale promised anyone who would listen to him that he would get to the bottom of what really went down, but even in private discussions exclusively between Ava and Dale, he was adamant he had no good explanation for it. Given our tendency to draw the truth out of Dale, this insistence either meant that he was honestly in the dark about how Leper escaped, or he was bound to secrecy by somebody more terrifying. The list of people Dale feared more than Sydney was not a long one. Probably only one name. Charlie, who was always quick to assume Howie's guilt and eager to guess his motivations for inexplicable behaviors, had a theory that Prophet was just pissed off how full Roll 1 was getting. Given the additional leniency we had been granting Anomaly since blackmailing Peter, maybe he was trying to clean house, break Leper out, and let us equalize him this time. That proved harder than anyone expected, and Leper still clutching to his life was evidence enough of that. Personally, I doubted Prophet was the culprit, because why bother releasing Leper at all if you wanted him dead? Howie could just as easily write us a 3-word email, please equalize Leper, and we'd all be too afraid to defy a direct order. There were more efficient ways for Howie to empty Row 1 if he wanted to. Charlie countered that maybe he was creatively working around a forecast, which he did sometimes when his messages from fate ran against his own grander schemes, since he couldn't ignore them completely. In all honesty, the point was kind of moot. Leper was back on lockdown now, and we were on higher alert for him if he managed to get out again. In the first place, the only reason Leper ever caused trouble was that Charlie and I were distracted both times he attacked. With either of us present, he was basically as good as thwarted. Hell, if anything, another breakout would just make Beam look bad, and I was always for that. As for the other citizens of Row 1, there wasn't much mayhem to be had. It didn't matter who got out next, even considering the recent boost in population. There was nobody who presented much of a threat to Ava. Except, of course, Tyler Foone, whom I was on my way to visit. I glanced into Micah Single's cell as I walked down the row. Leper was a resilient and disgusting individual. On my way to Foone meetings, I always went past him. I'd seen him 5 times since we reapprehended him, but this was the first time where he had his head back. He was currently partaking in the absolutely stomach-turning process of chipping pieces of skull out of his face against the floor, patching together a new one to wear over his head. I could have puked if I gave it any deeper consideration than a passing glance, and I think he noticed my discomfort because he started cackling silently behind the glass. A few lockups down was Torrin Cloud, the human tornado, running across his cell and slamming into the walls, trying to generate the right level of momentum to go Cyclone, not even getting close. Right next to him was this girl from Montana that Caraway asked us to take, with the vortex breath and the supersonic shout, desperately trying to suck up the wall and yell it down, to no avail. 3 doors down from her was the lumberjack who summoned mystical ancient shaman forces to channel the spirit of the grizzly bear who killed his wife, currently in bear mode eating his bed. 2 later was the Canadian woman covered in poisonous quills named Portia Pine, not joking, who honestly only was in Row 1 for the significance of her being our first international bust after threatening the Prime Minister. It was a pretty long way before the next occupied cell, and if you didn't count Sid's old block featuring an empty glass capsule we used to dwell in, it was Tyler Foone. He was just lying there, peacefully, staring at the ceiling, glancing toward the clock, patiently waiting for me to show up. Strange how he was bar none the most dangerous guy in the entire dungeon, maybe the building, and these days also the most peaceful. It was later than I typically paid him visits. I used to try to get them over with early and quickly, but since we'd managed to string together a few civil, albeit awkward conversations, I wasn't really dreading it much. Knowing I had to talk to Tyler used to be the biggest sinkhole in my week. Now it was a borderline enjoyable experience, so long as we kept it light, weather, sports, books, and music. Tyler was a decent enough guy to talk to. Once both of us had decided to make the best of these conversations, things ran a lot smoother than they probably should have. It was maybe even a little embarrassing how well I got on with him when I blocked out what he actually was. If Charlie ever witnessed it, she'd probably kick my ass.
Ah, Mr. Teaque.
He smiled and nodded to me, slowly sitting upright on his bed as I held down both buttons of the speaker.
Monday already?
Mr. Foone, I'm afraid it is, I responded without glancing up from my paperwork.
Little late today. Wasn't sure you were coming.
That is not what you're supposed to say next. I disappointedly shook my head. He cackled, which quickly became coughing, as usual.
Sorry. Decided I'd go a bit off script a little. Getting kind of formulaic, you know. Anyway, fine. How's the weather?
He reluctantly and exasperatedly recited his line. Warming up, mid-60s, that's like 18 for you? I checked before I came down here. Spring is finally coming.
And the pre-sip?
He eagerly asked. And not today. Most of the week it rained, but none today.
See, this is why I don't like asking you about the weather. Only matters to me if it's raining.
Well, forgive me, I smirked, finishing off writing the logistical stuff. I don't control the rain. Besides, always weather first. I like these things to have a pattern. I'm a bit of a stickler for tradition, I guess.
This is what, meeting 15?
I checked the top sheet of my stack to confirm. 14. Well, 13 if you don't count the first one where I just unplugged you. I guess only 11 if you throw out the two where we didn't talk at all.
10 good meetings in a row. Not bad, mate. Better streak than I thought we'd hit coming in, eh?
Yeah, it's pretty staggering. I smiled. He was right. I never would have given us 10 in a row without some kind of incident.
Let me throw a suggestion. Celebration for our little run, yeah? I've been downright pleasant. How about a wee reward?
I'm open to the concept if it's not something outrageous. For example, I'm not opening the door. I knocked on the glass a few times, shaking my head.
Nah, nothing like that. I was thinking maybe, since I've been so good about it, this time, maybe just this time, we could maybe get rid of them rules.
Nope. I quickly denied him.
Come on, mate. I'll be a total fucking gent about it. Nothing off color, nothing dirty. I swear on me mum.
That idea, Foone. Don't push your luck with it.
Look, I'm a sucker for romance, alright? I just want to hear the story, that's all. I just want to hear how it started. Tell me that, and I'll hush up on it for the rest of me days. Meeting 300 will come and go. I won't make a noise about it, promise.
He begged me so earnestly, I had to laugh a little, but even that didn't discourage him from his quest to hear our story. Charlie would absolutely murder me if she found out I told him. Literally murder me. Violent, swiftly, without remorse. But the story was actually a source of some mild anguish for me. It always had been. And the last time I expressed my mild anguish to Tyler on a Charlie thing, he proved to be a fantastic listener and even got me pointed in the right direction to remedy it. Maybe it was all right to tell him for me, not him. It wasn't like anyone would ever find out what we talked about anyway. Fine. You want to hear it? I'll tell you.
Yes.
He excitedly pumped his fist.
Beautiful, because I just can't piece it together what she's doing with you.
He quickly flashed a toothy grin so that I know his jab was in good spirits. I didn't let on that he might not get this question answered by this story. Hell, I didn't know what she was doing with me. Okay, it was like, December before last, something like that.
Come on, mate. Don't expect me to believe you don't know the specific date. Bet you circled it on your calendar. Bet you celebrated like a holiday. Bet you filled a whole diary on just that day alone.
Hey, buddy, do you really want to hear this story? He cackled, coughed, waved his hand to apologize, then gestured it in circles so I would continue. It was December 10th, all right? I ashamedly admitted my knowledge of the precise date. He busted out in uproarious guffaws, and even I had to snicker along with him. Okay, anyway, that was a good 10 months after I ended my previous long-term relationship, and I'd known all along that I wanted to be with Charlie. I've been trying for a while to figure out a way to tell her how I felt, though. She was icy toward prior advances. Those were all back when we first met, and then I was with Maria for 6 months, so a lot changed since the last time Charlie thought I had a crush on her. I wasn't sure if she knew I still had feelings for her, but I wanted to come up with a good way to tell her without her just slamming the door in my face, you know?
Right, you're a big twat. Continue.
I shook my head and ignored him. So anyway, this was all during Beam's expansion, toward the tail end of it. And one of the big crowd-pleasing features of opening a new branch was having a member of Ava take on the inaugural bust. It was super stupid, but it made like a big publicity circus. People sometimes voted on which branch got which agent, and all the first busts would be in theme with the branch's location. So like, Mountain was a big Yeti guy. West, they did a Silicon Valley sort of supercomputer hacker. Like I said, like really freaking stupid, cheesy as hell, but it played well. Anyway, it was the Everglades branch on December 10th, which was one of the last ones, and I took on the bus for it. And the anomaly went by Swampy. I gave him a moment to recognize the stupidity, rolling my eyes and nodding knowingly. And the asshole was just this moron with a vacuum strapped to his back that sucked up swamp water and then shot it at me.
Sounds like me.
He smirked. Yeah, I think that's what he was going for. Basically a knockoff version of you. Pointless, you know? I could have taken him out in 10 seconds by lifting him out of the mud or crushing his machinery, but it was supposed to be all ceremonious, so I tried to make it look good, flying around, doing tricks, whatever. And the dickhead hit me with a blast of mud while my back was turned. So I got mad, knocked him around a bit, tossed him into the truck. The whole thing ended in like 15 seconds with me covered in muck. And I was just about to get it off of me, telekinesis it away, but our press secretary, Peter, was so pissed at me for cutting the battle short that he made me stay muddy to keep the illusion of something actually having happened. So that press conference in Florida, the flight back to Beam, and the second presser in the Capitol, I did it all completely drenched in swamp crap.
This is an excellent story, Jackson, but I'm not sure it's exactly the one I asked for.
Hold on, man, it's coming, I promise. Anyway, after an entire day just drenched in filth, I was grumpy and I smelled terrible. I still could have just teaked it away, but I decided to just go take a shower for the privacy and the relaxation or whatever. I got into my apartment, took off my shirt, started walking towards the shower. Suddenly, Charlie grouped in. She just does that. She's really comfortable like that. And I don't think I even heard what she came in to tell me because she just started laughing at me, standing there, shirtless, caked in filth. I told her the story about Swampy and Peter and how pissed off I was, and she was listening, sort of, but seemed really distracting. And she kept like looking at me funny and walking toward me and smiling at weird parts of the story, like she was just pretending to pay attention. And by the time I got to the end of it, to the part where I was grumpy and wanted to shower and go to bed, she just looks me square in the eyes, takes a deep breath, and says, "You want to boink?" Foone cringed, hissed through his teeth. He looked at me almost apologetically, like he just backed his car into mine or broken a priceless family heirloom, when in reality all he'd done was just ask me to relive this memory. I tried to shrug it off, but inadvertently sighed as my shoulders dropped back down. Yep, that's it.
She used that precise terminology.
He asked, still kind of wincing.
I mean, you're not. This is like...
Hand to God, just like that, out of the blue. You want to boink? I assured him adamantly of the validity of my story. And I was like stunned. No idea what I even said. Some gibberish, befuddled nonsense. So she elaborated. She said basically that we were both attractive, consenting adults. We cared for and respected each other a lot. So why not just...
Boink.
He finished for me, but with this subtle twinge of pity that made me a bit uneasy. Yeah, boink, I guess, I grumbled. I mean, it's not exactly a fairy tale, but hell, what was I supposed to do? Say no to Charlie? I sheepishly grinned for a second, but then transitioned into an apologetic smirk as the words echoed around in my brain. Sorry, that came off a little more pervy and objectifying than I intended.
Nah, it didn't.
He was still glaring at me, with subtle twinges of both understanding and remorse, which shouldn't have blended so evenly on anyone's face, but especially not a guy like Foone. At least not the Foone I thought I knew. Right. Well, I guess we do have different definitions for those concepts. That's been pretty well established.
Does she know that you're bloody in love with her, though?
I stammered through some monosyllabic grunts, which collectively conveyed my baffled bewilderment at his sudden random question. I couldn't make it genuinely seem like it was as preposterous as I wanted him to think it was. Like I didn't know with 100% certainty that I was completely bloody in love with Charlie.
I guess she'd have to, honestly. It's painfully obvious she's too bright, unless she's just too close to see it.
Tyler, come on, man. We're not... I'm not in...
There, you see it? Can't even bring yourself to lie about it.
He smirked, but gently, standing up on his rickety legs and walking toward the glass so I could read the sincerity in his eyes.
It ain't pervy and objectifying, it's hopelessly romantic. You can't say no to Charlie Shade, not because you don't want to, you're literally incapable. The girl's got your heart on lock, comes at you with one point, you're damn right to ask what the fuck else you're supposed to do, don't even have another option.
I reminded myself briskly that it didn't matter what I said. Tyler was my personal confession booth anyway, vow of silence enforced by a thick pane of glass. He read me well, a perfect listener, so I said what I was thinking. I was in love with her when she asked me, Tyler. I've been in love with her since 3 weeks after I met her. I don't know if I knew it then, but I was in love with her when I was with Maria.
No doubt, mate. You get that look in your eye when you talk about her.
He tapped a finger against the socket of his own baggy, bloodshot eyes.
You do got to tell her, Jaxon. Even if she already knows it, you gotta tell her anyway.
Right. After her impassioned plea to the logic of attractive consenting adults who respect each other boinking, because why not? I facetiously derided.
First of all, you don't know if that was her trying to pierce the same fold you was trying to come up with a way to do. And second, that was forever ago. You really think a person could just keep having sex with another person for 16 months if she doesn't have some kind of more intimate attachment?
If anyone can, it's Charlie.
Ain't that just the most glowing endorsement of character on the woman you supposedly love?
You should have seen her. When she realized Murphy knew about us, she flipped out. Why would she want to keep something like that a secret if she loved me?
Ever ask her that?
Yes, she doesn't want to complicate it with the press finding out or give Howie any more leverage over us than he already has.
Well, shit, sounds good to me.
You ever hear the phrase, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Foone?
You ever heard the phrase, stop being a fucking twat and tell her how you feel for it gets one of you hurt?
That's not actually a phrase.
It's British.
I watched his eyes quivering back and forth, trying to figure out his game, read his angle for saying the things he was saying. I still suspected everything Tyler said to me was just playing to my sympathies, but even considering I couldn't come up with a reason. Then I gave up. I grimaced a bit, begging him wordlessly to tell me what he was up to.
You need to tell people that you care about them while you can, Jaxon.
He said it with the tone of a man who'd learned that lesson multiple times firsthand.
And I guarantee you, it's not all about the sex for Charlie.
How do you know that? I pleaded.
Because you sodding dolt. I don't care how detached she is. People don't just start shagging their best friend and coworker who they see every day and live with because they're bored and muddy and it's bloody well convenient. Trust me, I know what it looks like.
You know what looks like.
Love, mate. You got it for her, she got it for you. I can tell your old chum Tyler Foone's a romantic, he is.
And in spite of our uneasy peace with each other, his valuable advice, and my attempts to block out his past when I talked to him, something about this statement ran so contrary to Tyler that I had to call attention to it. Is that why you murdered your wife? I instantly regretted it, the blunt honesty, given how sympathetic he'd been to me so far today, but to my surprise, he just laughed.
You know that whole story then, do you?
I've read your eval report like 15 times, and it included all your criminal charges back home, so yeah, I think I got a pretty good idea.
Now, what if I told you I didn't do nothing to her? Would that color your opinions of the whole thing a bit differently?
It caught me off guard, but he kept going before I could explain.
They found a pile of corpses and one cat standing by, made an assumption, hey?
Foone, are you seriously suggesting?
Suppose I told you we'd made passionate love to each other just hours prior. What would you say to that?
Hours prior to you murdering her. I thought I was exposing the absurdity of his claim pretty clearly, but he didn't back down from it.
You don't think your opinion of a person can change in a few hours?
It's a pretty dramatic pendulum swing from passionate consensual love to murder. I let loose an uncomfortable chuckle as I tried again to convince myself he was talking in circles.
Suppose she showed her true colors.
He didn't flinch from his justified platform. By sleeping with her ex-husband, I tried one more time to express my sincere disbelief at his versions of things. You think that justifies killing her?
Fuck, Teaque, you got it all locked up, hey? You think you read about it on some paper, so it must be true, yeah?
You confessed.
So, but why are we talking about it so much if you already got it all wrapped up in a bow?
Okay, then tell me what happened, Tyler. I indulged his leading question, certain he had nothing good to offer anyway.
Nah, I don't think I will. I ain't got shit to prove you no one.
You literally do. I lifted a pink sheet in my hand and tapped my pen against them. It is entirely why I'm here. He mulled it over for a bit, contemplating how much he wanted to let me in on, looking me up and down with some ferocious intensity. I must have let on that I wasn't really entertaining the notion of his alternate version of things, because eventually he just let loose a hefty exhale, rolled his eyes and shook his head, apparently judging me unworthy of the full truth, at least when I was in such a contradictory mood.
Alright, let's just say, if I had it again, I'd do the same.
He elected to let on just this much.
Let's just say I went and did the world a favor that day.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really feeling the romanticism here, Cupid. Highly compassionate sentiment.
Once more, you ain't got shit to say until you know what really happened. I will tell you that I did love her, and at a time when I didn't think I could love again. And you're only boy that I killed her in cold blood, but hell, even if I did, well, if that's not enough to show you she deserved it, then I don't know what more to say.
Jesus.
What's that?
Oh, nothing. I almost forgot you have a really distorted mentality concerning death, Foone, along with like 14 other basic human concepts.
Yeah, you could say that, but tell me this straight, Teaque. Say you learned something about Charlie, something that shook you to the core, some fundamental piece of her that was all for show. Say you watched the whole thing end in an instant. You'd be alright. You wouldn't tear the world to bits. You just go on, life as usual.
Look, man, I don't have the context here because you won't give it to me.
Haven't earned it. You're far too glib.
Sure, I didn't really care, so I didn't bite. But if I found out something deep, something really shitty about Charlie that made me realize the whole thing was a farce, I might do a lot of very dumb things. I absolutely guarantee you I wouldn't kill her for it. He shrugged.
Maybe just don't love her the way I love Marquet, then.
Yes, clearly that must be it. I took the opportunity to check the rejection box on my evaluation sheet. Given our current exchange, he probably deserved it as much as ever, but I found it curious that it took me this long to check it. My internal deal with these things had always been he failed automatically, and any discussion we had was of no influence on that simple fact. I must have just forgotten to mark the box before now. You are a downright impossible person to get a good read on, Foone, I said once I finished rejecting him yet again.
For you, maybe. I bet Purple Man would get it. You know the difference between guys like you and guys like me in Sydney.
I'm not comfortable with you categorizing yourself with my best friend on this.
You ain't lost everything. Sydney has. I saw a story on my telly up there. Special news coverage on him. Painted it as a triumphant overcoming, but I saw his tragedy. Lost the whole world, just like me. Take everything away from a man, banish him to the dirt, and ask yourself, what'll he reemerge as when that phoenix rises? How do you suppose his demeanor will handle the ruin? You think he'll be chipper? You think he'll set out to inspire the masses? The answer is Sid and me. We're the brand of beastie that comes from letting a human rebuild himself from the rubble. When you got nothing left, that's exactly what matters. Nothing. And living with that blank, empty, even for just a split second of it, that'll drive you mad. We're the same kind of psychotic, Sydney and I.
You are an entirely different strata of psychotic, Foone.
Nah, not entirely. The only distinction is Sid lost it all and had you lot to clean him up, keep him in control. Something to catch on to, refocus his wrath, gave him something to fight for. But me, I was by myself. I was alone, so I redirected it where I could. Sid and I are the same person. The only difference is that somebody rescued Sid. I lost myself by myself, and I latched on to the next thing that would have me. It happened to be rage, so there it went.
No rules today. And he'd already gone well beyond violating Rule 1. I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't come up so organically, but I couldn't help but call out the absurdity of his flippant dismissal of his own degeneracy. Sure, there it went. Just murdered a little girl in cold blood. Wow, perfectly understandable in this framework. Can't believe I didn't see it before. His arrogant smirk dropped instantly.
You'll judge me for that, then?
Sid would not have done it. I don't care how lost he was, Tyler, Sid would not have killed Sabrina. I immediately regretted saying her name aloud, but his wordless despair lasted significantly shorter than it did the first time we talked about his daughter.
Right. Hey, why don't you go and watch your stepdad kill your mum and dad? Then go, have a regular life. Maybe be a seamstress, open a flower shop. See how it goes for you with that memory just bumbling around in your noggin. Death is a mercy sometimes, mate. You of all people should know that.
And I did. From my jaded as hell worldview, sure, I could see there was some compassion in what he did for the girl. Compassionate murder. I hated myself for recognizing it as possible, so I feigned total disgust. In fairness to me, I was at least half disgusted anyway. She deserved a chance, Tyler. She was just a baby. And the odds were against her, fine. She at least deserved a chance. He scoffed at me, shook his head to the floor, trying to prevent me from seeing the remorse and regret and anguish in his sullen, bloodshot eyes. If Tyler Foone were permitted the water required to make tears, I think I might have seen him cry.
Funny, ain't it? That you'd take that stance, Equalizer.
Tyler, that's not fair.
Oh, now we fight fair, huh? Look, I'm not exactly looking for your approval, alright? Or even your misguided, ill-informed fucking opinions. Just... time's up anyway. You were right. This was a bad idea. Sorry, I know we didn't get an even split, but... I guess I still can't talk about Sabrina without...
And he broke off, listlessly glaring into the glass, then pounded his fist against it, raised his gaze to meet mine, a cripple, uneasy smile.
Let's just keep off limits, yeah?
I sincerely hoped it would rain next Monday, so that I would have something to get us back on our streak of good meetings. When I left Foone's lockup and made it back to my apartment, Charlie was already waiting for me within it. Since our recent pact against daytime sex for Sydney's sake, we spend basically every night together, and usually in my apartment, since she could sneak into mine unnoticed a lot easier than I could sneak into hers. And as I looked at her, I thought about the concept of her being in love with me, the way I was in love with her. Watching her, watching me, it didn't seem so outlandish as it had just 5 minutes ago, but then maybe what I was actually detecting was just her eagerness to boink. I wasn't ready to tell her how I felt, which probably made me a coward, but whatever. The risk of scaring her off, killing what was already a pretty great thing by pushing it too hard, too fast, was too great. I decided instead to just test the water, dip my feet in. Tyler Foone was surprisingly good at reading other people. He guaranteed me Charlie was in this for more than sex. Perhaps I could figure that out by indirect and super immature methods, rather than just asking her directly. Hey, Charlie? I couldn't believe I said once we'd crawled into bed, her half naked and on top of me. I thought maybe tonight we could try something different.
Okay.
She was a bit hesitant.
What exactly did you have in mind?
Well, see, okay, I thought that maybe we could just sleep together. Like without actually sleeping together, you know?
Huh?
She sat up abruptly. I sighed, too far into my idea to retreat now. I was thinking just like you and me in a bed going to sleep together with each other, but that's it. Just like you sleeping alongside me, no sex. What do you think? She hesitated for a moment, then kicked her leg back over me. For an instant, I thought she was gone, and my heart turned to lead. Why did I have to mess with it? Why did I have to stick a wrench in a good thing? Yeah, I wanted more. So what? I had the girl I was in love with, the girl of my wildest, craziest, most unfathomable dreams, begging me to sleep with her, and I asked her to sleep alongside me instead. Stupid Tyler Foone, manipulating me into trying something so pointless. How could I fix this? How could I patch it up? How could I stuff the genie back in the bottle? But then I realized she was still there. She didn't group away back to her apartment. She hadn't even left the bed. Instead, she flopped into it beside me, then just snuggled in close, nuzzling her head onto my shoulder and flinging her arm across my chest.
Okay.
She said matter-of-factly and softly, shutting her eyes.
Let's try it.
It was a glorious 2 minutes of silent comfort, but if I ever counted on Charlie to keep quiet for longer than that, I didn't know the first thing about the girl I loved, and I could tell she was not quite convinced on this course of action by the way she kept flicking her 49th bus present to me, the boner rock that I always had hanging around my neck.
Kinda boring, you know?
Yeah, I know, but it's good, right? This is still good?
Still good.
Sounded sincere enough. Like it's setting a precedent too. Like, now we don't have to do it every night. We can just think about tonight, because tonight we totally would have, we totally wanted to.
Yeah.
Was all she said in response. And see, but now it doesn't mean anything if we don't, right? It doesn't necessarily mean like we're drifting apart or losing a spark or anything. Not having sex one time, maybe it just means like...
We're sleepy? I'm not actually sleepy right now, though.
Charlie, if you're humoring me, can you just tell me and we can stop?
Hey, if I say I'm humoring you, can we fuck?
She opened her eyes and looked at me excitedly. I sighed audibly. But before I could give in, she kept going.
JT, relax. I don't do things I don't want to do. You know that. And most of the time in our daily lives, I basically am humoring you, but even that is just because I like you, and right now, I'm not. Honest. This is nice.
Why? No, damn it, shut up. Stop testing it. Let it go. Take your victory. What makes it nice?
Oh.
She answered, genuinely surprised as she began to lightly draw circles with her finger on my bare chest around the boner rock.
Okay, I get it. I'm not really good at, being like this, so cut me a little slack, alright? But it's nice because it's just me and you know? And I like you. A lot. I like you a fucking lot. So it doesn't matter if we're killing somebody or we're just sitting here doing nothing or having sex. If I'm doing it with you, it's good. It's nice. And sure, the ravenous fire burning in my loins has its own preference for how we should be spending these minutes, but if you want to do this, we'll do this. I'll give you this because I like you. Is that good enough? Can I stop now? Mercy kill my attempt at expressing emotions, JT. Please, put it out of its misery.
You do suck at it. But thank you, Charlie. Yeah. I probably just need to stop listening to my own stupid thoughts.
Yes, listen only to me. That would be best for everyone.
She smiled and closed her eyes, drifting away into slumber. 10 minutes later, she was out like a light, snoring like a lumberjack, sprawled on top of my body, even drooling a little bit. A disgusting display, yet at the same time, flawless. Precisely everything I could ever ask for. I stayed up until sunrise, spent hour upon exhausted hour, just watching her sleep. I had experienced some incredible nights during my time with Charlie. This one ranked near the top of that list.
Thank you for listening to The Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. Follow me on socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Email me for any reason, including if you want me to collab on some art, beamchronicles@gmail.com. A 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen to this show on would be lovely. All music and sound effects were sourced from the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for the show. Thank you one more time for listening.